Hey, White Sox fans, Brett Ballantini here with Pregame Podcast from Side Sox, number 6. It's our third of the year, second of the regular season, and first for home games. We are just hours away from the White Sox enjoying their home opener, all the pomp and circumstance, 3 o'clock-ish first pitch, probably going to be a little later than that. Hopefully weather holds up really nice, and it's just going to be a great day, including a third straight win for the White Sox. Previewing the season home opener with me is Adrian Serrano, not napping on the couch, but here with us for some podcast energy. And Adrian, let's first talk about, before we get to all the good stuff, because there's a lot of good stuff to talk about, and we really should probably lead off with good stuff. So you know what? I'm going to reverse course, Adrian. Let's talk about good stuff about the White Sox. Of course, first of all, 2.5, 2 3/4 wins out of 3 games in Detroit, but unfortunately in the standings, just 2 out of 3. But to me, the offense is doing exactly what it needs to be doing for the White Sox to be successful right out of the gate, while the rotation and maybe even the bullpen are trying to sort of get themselves together. You're seeing contact. You're seeing the guys that you need to be coming through, pretty much coming through, with even some surprises for guys you wouldn't expect it from. I'm guessing you're about as pleased you can be with the offense as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can be too mad about scoring 10 runs without, Yoan Moncada and Yasmani Grandal in the lineup.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a bit of patience from some of the guys, which has been nice. They've been working counts a little bit. That first game, it did feel like they kind of, I don't know, maybe kind of took it down a notch after the starter left. I don't know. It was weird. It looked like they were really keyed up and, really working counts and really trying. And then as the bullpen kind of came in for Detroit, and, obviously the offense is not what let that game get away from them, but it did feel like that was going to be a 10-run game, kind of at the time early on in that. But it's, I think it's good, especially with Tim back. It just feels different when Tim's out there.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget. Okay, the first 2 games, the White Sox offense does pretty well, as you said. Sort of petered out the first in game 1. Sort of strange. That looked like that could be a 10-run game as well. But all right, no Tim Anderson in the first 2 games, no Yoan Moncada this whole series. And of course, guys are always out. But I mean, we're not talking about a full strength White Sox team, and let's just pray we don't have a lineup at any point where we're missing like a third or more of the lineup, as happened last year with Madrigal out basically for the season, with Luis Robert out for so long, and Eloy, of course. You can take these hits here and there, but you really want these guys full strength. But now, as you point out, we've seen them not full strength, basically all 3 games so far, not full strength, not their optimal lineup, and really, really clicking. Something that jumps out at me, Adrian, I'm sure you too, is a lack of strikeouts or making contact. And I'm guessing that has to be related a little bit to the fact that this is a stronger offensive lineup than we've really seen them have, even without Yoan. And hopefully there's a mentality that's coming from Menachino on down of just saying, hey, the guy behind you can pick you up, patience. I mean, not everybody's going to be Yasmani Grandal, of course, but the idea that there's not weak spots and that maybe they don't feel any need to press. If you're in the 6 hole, it's like, oh my God, the last third of this order is just a dump. Hopefully it just makes it even easier to say, you know what, I'm going to wait for my pitch. If the guy gets me, fine, but I'm not going to go chasing, fishing right off the bat. It seems like they're locked in with a really good mentality, not necessarily something we saw in spring training either. So it's great to see them in Detroit, bad conditions, and still really rock the ball all 3 games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is something to that, just knowing kind of the way that the lineup is put together, that there is so much firepower that there's not really a lot of guys that don't have any protection. I think maybe if we saw it in game 1, like something that put an end to the scoring early kind of was Tony's decision to put Leary pretty early up. I think he batted 6 in that first game. So Eloy didn't get a lot of pitches in that game because you're not going to challenge Eloy with a fastball when Leary's behind him. No offense to Leary, he's a great player and he's more than capable as a major leaguer, but you're going to take your chances.
Scrappy, right?
Yeah, 10
not
out of 10
powerful,
times,
scrappy.
Yeah, you're going to let him try to beat you before you're going to let Eloy beat you. I think, just and guys like Luis Robert just kind of taking that next step in year 3 now and looking like he's going to try to, reduce some of those strikeouts that have been a problem for him and kind of take more pitches. And he seems more adept at just kind of like working counts and looking for his pitch instead of just being up there and being, defensive and relying on athleticism and guessing.
And this is something you would see hopefully naturally progressing with the young players. You got guys now who got 2-3 seasons under their belt, even though, Robert and Eloy and, a number of these guys have had like partial seasons. I mean, they're getting a lot of reps under their belts. And hopefully that just comes with some maturity. The fact that injuries haven't popped up to the degree where, even Jake Berger was only forced into the lineup that very first game. It's not like he has to be playing every game where he would be this true rookie and maybe making a lot of those mistakes and pressing. You really don't have that because even Andrew Vaughn, who I guess in most cases is going to be the youngest guy in the lineup on any given day. I mean, he's the guy who comes sort of like as this professional hitter, even though he's still a very young guy. I mean, you don't jump from high A to the majors without having maturity that goes beyond your years. So this team, you could argue, really doesn't even boast any like young, raw guys on a regular basis. And that's only going to help the patience, hopefully the contact, the confidence, the fact that really no one pitcher is ever really going to just kill their confidence and destroy their offense. They really are going to be in it for 9 innings. You'd think, even if a guy sort of has them, for first or second time through the order, that they really have shown an ability to rally even in their loss. I mean, they did sort of keep fighting back.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think with 2020 being such a weird year for everybody, it kind of throws everything off. Like we forget that, Luis Robert still only has like, he hasn't even gotten to the 700 at bat, point in his career yet, so like you really can't tell who the hitter is going to be until they hit 1,000, so he's honestly only got a few hundred more at bats than Andrew Vaughn does, like it's even like it seems like, well, he's been in the league so much longer, but like he really hasn't because he only played in that 60 games and then missed so much of last year. Like they're really not that far off from each other as far as pro experience at the plate. So it's exciting to see them both kind of developing and seeing them making changes. And now you've gone through the first phase where you come up and they don't know anything about you, and then they'll make an adjustment, and then it's your job to make an adjustment, and then they'll make an adjustment again. So like we're kind of in the third phase now of like, all right, you've made your adjustment. Now we'll wait for the pitching to catch up to that, and they'll make their adjustment. But luckily there's a lot of other guys in this lineup, so they can struggle, and it's not going to be as big of a deal as it has been in the past for these teams when you're really relying on, 2 or 3 guys to really carry the load. Eloy for sure in these last 3 games, like he hasn't really crushed any balls, but like he's got a couple RBIs, and like he's one of, I think, 4 guys in the league that has not swung and missed yet this year. So when he's swinging, he's making contact. So like he's not in sync yet because it's still early in the year, but like he's seeing the ball incredibly well. And like, so there's something going on with the team as far as like the way they're preparing and the way that they're going about it offensively that seems to be exciting going forward, that like something's working. They're seeing the ball well. They're taking counts, like, they're going to start producing at a high level.
And it's such a pleasant surprise because, again, for the first 2 games, you don't even have your spark plug who you really expect to be the guy who sort of drives the rest of this lineup. And let's face it, Tim Anderson still is that guy, but the idea that he doesn't have to necessarily be the guy running up and down the dugout, motor mouthing it, getting in everybody's heads, getting them all, psyched up. Now maybe the rest of this offense it's just as eager to attack as Tim is. But let's just talk about Tim for a second. How delightful is it, Adrian? This is a guy, obviously a homegrown product, a guy who we've seen grow before our eyes, even defensively, which was, of course, I guess his weakest point. And he has grown, at least, I think you could argue, to at least an average defender at shortstop at this point, which is a fair expectation for him. But this is a guy who really every year has gotten better. And that's just rare. I mean, we just are not used to seeing that. This is a guy who really is, as much as it seems like a cliche, sort of growing before our eyes. And that's both in this, leadership way, guy who came up very quiet, and now he is, you cannot shut him up, and it's delightful. But also as a player, people say, oh, the BABIP, or, it's a product of his wheels, which is a BABIP thing too. He's defying it every year, and he's come out of the gate on Sunday. I wasn't sitting in the hotel watching, the game for 2 games. I was, it's like the guy was playing. I mean, whether he's your favorite guy or not, just the fact that we've got this homegrown guy this guy who didn't come in with any hype, probably came with a lot of doubts, given that he could have easily fallen in line of a lot of failed White Sox draft choices. And just to see him not only succeed and actually be able to produce even at a minimal level at the major league level, but actually blossom into a star in every facet, or he's doing a YouTube series and he's doing advertisements and he's mic'd up every possible opportunity. To me, it's just such a delight to see that. Again, whether he's your favorite guy, you're a catcher, so okay, you're sort of studying the catchers. But just no matter where you play and whether you're a pitcher or not, you just got to say, man, I'm so happy this guy is on our team. And it's like you don't know where his career is going to cap. It could just keep getting better.
Yeah, if I don't think you can be a baseball fan and not be a fan of what you see out of Tim Anderson. Just coming from like the fact that it's like, we're watching this, episodic thing on Tim Anderson that's been coming out, and like just really putting it into perspective that he just hasn't been playing baseball very long. Like, so you could imagine like what if this guy had played baseball, since he was, a child, a young child, like a lot of these guys have. I couldn't only imagine what kind of player it'd be. And then I think we're also kind of needing to face the fact that like in baseball, we sometimes come across a one of one. And I think Tim is kind of one of those guys, a one of one. It's like what works for him isn't going to work for everybody. It probably won't work for anybody else but Tim, but like for whatever reason, like it works for him. And, we kind of started talking about it in 2019 that like, oh man, he's really important to this team. And then we saw it in 2020 when he missed some games towards the end. And then we saw it again last year, and we keep forgetting that there is just nobody more important on this ball club than Tim Anderson. Like, it's just a different team when Tim Anderson's in the lineup and when Tim Anderson's not in the lineup. Like, everybody's talented around him, but like, there's just something about that guy that just makes him the guy amongst all these other great players to still have that magnetism and that pull and that effect on the game. Like, it's just different, It felt easier when Tim was out there. Like, he just goes and does his job. 3-hit games or not.
Yeah.
There's not very long until you're going to get another one.
Right. It seems strange to connect him to a player from almost 100 years ago, but he, in a sense, he is an heir apparent to Luke Appling. He's a guy who can get the bat on any pitch. That's what's so, in addition to all the actual production, but just the fun that he brings and the fact that you really can't throw him anywhere. You cannot save. I mean, he's going to get a hit. If he hasn't already in his career, he's going to get a hit one day. Well, that's right. I'll scratch that because they don't throw intentional walks anymore. But if they were still having to throw 4 balls, he's a guy who's going to reach out and poke a hit to right field at some point, because that's just the kind of, there was the clip, I think from last year, where he was jumping to try to hit a ball that somebody was throwing back to the backstop. The remarkable, and I think it speaks to him being this multi-sport athlete, certainly a great basketball player as a prep, that, he has skills that are so uncommon, including the fact that you can't throw him anywhere safely. And if he's sort of locked in, he's maybe looking for the pitch, he's going to hit it no matter where it is. And we've seen him not just hit it like a Luke Appling might and just like waste 20 balls foul and into the stands, but he's actually going to put it fair, get on base and be like, it could have been down the heart of the plate or it could have been at my feet, but I'm on second base.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for like, the fact that he hasn't been playing baseball very long also means that he kind of avoided a lot of the pitfalls of just like baseball groupthink. Like, he just thinks differently. Like, the way he approaches the game is different than a guy that would have been in Little League and then in the traveling teams. And they're kind of, they are all very generic and very like, I'm going to try to put everybody in this same box. And like, Tim is not going to be put in anybody's box, like Tim's going to be Tim every day, and it works for him. And like, it just can't help but root for a guy like that with that unbridled enthusiasm and just the love for the game that's clear every time he takes the field.
Yeah, that's a good point, Adrian. It's almost like he brings an international player spirit and background to the game, because there isn't, and I'm sure even at this point, we have the Dominican academies. I'm sure even there's some group think there even, but the idea that it's like, well, I just sort of came to the game on my own. People sort of liked what I did, and it's like, all right, I said, let's. I thought I was going to be a basketball player, but okay, let's try this baseball thing. It's working out for him. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you approaches it more like you would approach like a basketball preparation. Like, they work on things in a different way than baseball players do. So it's hard not to root for him. Like, he just is that guy. Like, Jose obviously is going to go down as an all-time great, but like, Tim Anderson is up there already, if not have already passed the torch, like that's the guy,
Yeah.
Jose's the mentor, and he's the old guy in the clubhouse, but like I feel like everything in that clubhouse goes through Tim,
Yeah.
like,
Not to force the metaphor, but I mean, production aside, Tim is the MJ, and Abreu is the Pippen for
leader.
sure.
He's both the leader of in energy and he's the guy going out there first. There's something said to be too about the guy that goes out there first to face the other team. Like it almost feels like sometimes like you feel like that was Rick Sutcliffe used to tell a story about like I'd get up there, like I'm not going to waste any pitches on Tony Gwynn. I'm going to throw him a fastball outside, let him get his single to the right. And I'm like, let's not waste effort on this. Like it feels like that sometimes with Tim. Like they're just like, just hit it to the right center, hit it to right field, get your single, and like we'll go with the next guy. I'm not going to sit here and take 10 pitches to try to get you out.
Plus, you just don't want to have to listen to him. Oh my God, I would hate to play against the guy. I mean, on one hand, maybe after the game, I'd be like, oh my God, that was hilarious what he said. But boy, if I had to listen to him for the game and I'm an opponent, I'd be like, oh God, you're driving me nuts, man. Which is another aspect of it. I imagine he gets in a few heads like MJ used to. Okay, Adrian and Southside Sox listenership. Time to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about maybe the rougher side of things. We have to do it. We are previewing the home opener later on today, so we're going to take a break. Be right back to talk. I don't know about the arms. White Sox fans, Brett Ballantini here, hosting Side Sox Pregame Podcast, third of this year, first at home. We are anticipating very eagerly some hours from now the home opener against Seattle, 3:00, and on the bump, just as you wrote it up, just as you fantasized about it, Adrian, it's Vince Velasquez hitting the home assignment, and really, he's probably the best guy to actually do it. Arguably, it's a frightening situation between Giolito injury, Lance Lynn injury, Carlos Rodon pitching on an entirely other coast. It's a rough rotation, and we really, I mean, what are your hopes, maybe matched against your expectations for Vince here in his first official White Sox game and start?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't know, obviously, like it's easy to look and say like, all right, well, this is the guy that they brought in to replace Rodon, and like technically yes, but it's actually a kind of a Kopech was who they thought was going to be, replacing Rodon, and then they were hoping that Vince Velasquez was going to maybe be their Dallas insurance. It's turned out to, be a little more complicated than that. We're just going to have to see. We have to have a lot of faith in, the pitching coach. They really trust him, to do the work, and he's shown already that, through guys like Dylan Cease's, progress, and some other guys that maybe, he does have that ability. He was a pretty high draft pick. If we're looking back at like 2018, he did throw 146 innings, and he was decently, effective for a couple years there. So like, he's got the stuff if he's put in a position. I think he just needs to really go in here and not try to do too much. I think it's interesting that Tony decided to go with him for opening day when the crowd is a little more revved up than go for Dallas, who could kind of handle that situation a little more. He's been in those situations before where things are kind of, rowdy. But I think he wants to, get him a, home opener. People are going to be excited to be there, so I think it might not be a bad situation for a new guy to come in with a lot of eyes on you and, give the best you can 4 or 5 innings and, 3 or 4 runs, knowing that like your offense can, easily do that. They have the offense to overcome any number of pitching. If they score 10 runs a game, like their pitching has holes, but it doesn't have the kind of holes that's going to give up 10 runs. Like I would be shocked if they have more than one game this year where they give up double digits. There's always going to be somebody talented coming out of the bullpen, that could shut them down at any time. So maybe, Bummer and Liam didn't have the greatest game in game 1, but like, there's Kendall Graveman was very good. Bennett Sosa's been very, very good to start off, So I feel like they just have so many arms they can keep throwing at you. Kelly's going to be back soon, and they just got to, score runs consistently. So I think somebody like a Vince Velasquez just really has to try not to do too much. You don't have to be hero. You don't have to be Lance Lynn. They're not asking you to be Lance Lynn. They're just asking you to go out there and give it a good effort,
And the good news for at least this first game with the day off is even if, let's say, best case is a couple times through the order, say he can get through 5, which would be amazing. And that would be, I think, more than the White Sox are even expecting, given the fact that Giolito, because of injury, couldn't get past 4. Kopech, because he's being, I guess a little bit babied, treated very smartly, maybe not super efficient start, could only get through 4. That if he could be the guy who goes the longest aside from Cease out of your first 4 games, you would just be you'd be tickled pink. And the good news, if things do go south, maybe he's not quite as efficient, and maybe he can only give maybe a decent 3 or say realistically 4. At least the bullpen for this game is set up where you've got Tanner Banks available. You got presumably Ronaldo, although we're going to get to how this pitching is going to resolve itself beyond a couple games from now. In addition to, of course, the lights out pen and the arms are available. We're going to have a fresh arm, or presumably fresh arm, coming up in Anderson Severino as well. So at least for this game, there should not be an excuse for the home opener of, like run out of pitches or not really having essentially your best guys available. So at least for this game, you feel pretty confident that even if it's a traditional Tony La Russa bullpen game, which is like, whatever, just sort of throw the names up in the air, that you maybe can't go wrong. You got to feel good, at least for the home opener, in terms of what arms can be thrown out at Seattle.
Yeah. And I think you just have to, you have to look around you and realize that, like, this is a much improved defense. Like, I think some of the pitchers kind of have to like change the way they think a little bit. Like, I know they've leaned towards like high strikeouts, but like, that's how we've seen guys like Reynaldo and Cease in the past get into trouble when they're really trying to be up there, strike everybody out and hit every corner. Like, sometimes you just got to make a good pitch and let them hit it and trust your defense behind you. And Velasquez does have, really good stuff. He's another guy that was up there, a few years as a starter in Philadelphia, like, high 9s, right around 10K per 9. Like, he's a guy that can get a lot of punch outs. Like, you don't get that number in this league without having really, really good stuff, but it's just a matter of keeping walks down. And, if they know that he's only going to be out there for 4 or 5 innings, like, it makes it a little easier for him to not worry about, pitch counts, and you're not trying to go 6 or 7. It's a different mentality also, but like, I think it can be all right. And I think they can, kind of hopefully get by for a couple months here until, we get all the starters back at the very least.
Well, you're confident that they can get through at least a couple months before everybody's back. I'm worried about this week, because as soon as game 5, and the 5th spot in the rotation, which I guess technically, although it's already thrown up in the air as to what number starter everybody is, technically Dallas Keuchel would be the 5th starter on this team. And Dallas is a veteran who has said before he knows what it means to have to go out there and eat some innings. And then he has, more often than not, it seems, failed in doing that. And I would expect that it is going to be a real fight for him, especially combined with the fact that just because he's a veteran doesn't mean he had any more prep time in spring training than these other guys. So he's not going to throw a 9. So you hope that this guy you can count on for at least that 5. But already by game 2 of this series, the bullpen, Velasquez isn't throwing 7. So, the bullpen's already going to be a little bit taxed, and you probably are holding, and this will be the next question, but you probably are holding Lopez for the next start, because I think La Russa said Cease isn't coming back on what will be his regular rest. He's going to come back on his regular turn. So you do have to have somebody pitching the finale of the Mariners series. So you're probably not really going to be able to use Lopez. So by even Keuchel start as early as the second game of this homestand, you've got a potential crunch. You've expressed some confidence in Dallas, maybe not in the matchups, because he's going to be facing Robbie Ray in his very first start this year. Not the best draw. Maybe years ago it would have been a good draw, not now. But I mean, this is a guy who's really going to have to muscle up and try to be efficient.
Yeah.
And he really needs to give the White Sox 5, because the bullpen's already going to be certainly more gas than it's going to be going into the home opener.
Yeah, certainly. And like, I really feel like what we're going to see is some kind of protracted bullpen game, whether, whether Reynaldo's out there to start, quote unquote, or not. Like, I don't think he'll go more than 2 innings just to make sure that he's still available for other games. But just the fact that they brought up Severino instead of trying to wait and bring up, a starter kind of makes me feel like, all right, they don't have anybody down there that they feel comfortable with. So they feel like they have enough arms with Foster and, Benasosa could go do an inning, like they have enough guys that could do 1 or 2 innings that they'll just, make it work. I think Dallas, is another interesting guy, and another, I think, guy that needs to kind of realize that the defense behind him is a lot different than it was last year. Like last year, they had a lot of moving pieces. Like the defense already, like Josh Harrison has brought like a level of defense, like knowing that like, all right, these are going to be out there. You don't have first baseman running out there in right field, so like it's just a much more professional outfit all around. So, if we can kind of use the metrics a little more, maybe shift as much as, some other the teams do. Dallas, even last year with a really bad year, was still, getting 56% of his, contact was on the ground. So like, he's not pitching that much different than he has in the past. It's just the success isn't there anymore. So like, he's definitely going to have to make some changes and, work a little harder than he had to in the past when he could throw a little harder. But I think he still has the tools to be effective. It's just a matter of, executing and not letting things get away from him.
Yeah, I mean, since he's been with the White Sox. I can't speak to his whole career, but certainly since he's been with the White Sox, he's been more of a, the pitch to contact type of guy, and he seemed obviously flourished in a, very short sample, a third of a season or whatever in 2020, and then of course that went really south in 2021. And I know part of that is, he didn't get quite the the defensive breaks, the defensive execution behind him. The shifting. So let's assume there's not going to be any change with the whole shifting thing. He's just going to have to pitch around that. And, maybe some of this was just bad luck. I mean, as easy as it is to make him, a real fall guy, and he does sort of earn it a little bit because he does open his mouth a little bit, which isn't the greatest. He was a hero when he did it the first time in 2020. And since then it hasn't been so good. But I mean, you just hope that he's a guy who says, all right, if it turns out that Tim Anderson misplays, or the tough position you chose there, but maybe the first baseman in right field while AJ Pollock is still out, maybe muffs a ball that he should have got. Well, people are going to see that. I mean, they may lay that on him and his ERA, but we all people watching are going to know, all right, well, that should have been taken care of for him. You can't blame him for the 6 runs because of the defensive execution. I mean, I hope he would give fans enough credit to realize that it's not just going to be, let's look at his line and let's just get angry at him. We do want him to succeed. It is a bit of a surprise he's even the 5th starter, even though he hasn't really proven that he should be in the rotation at all, but you got to use him.
And we're like 2 weeks away from Tony basically being non-committal. Before Lance Lynn's injury, Tony was kind of non-committal if Dallas was even in the rotation. So like, this is interesting too, because like, he's the only lefty in the rotation. You don't see a lot of major league teams going out there throwing 5 righties. Like, they like to have somebody to change it up, but like, kind of have to go with what you have. Like, you let Rodon walk, so you don't really have another lefty starter available. Maybe they have one in the minors that could, make a jump at some point, but they're not going to do it this year. That's so it's interesting to even talk about Dallas not being in the rotation, but, that's kind of where we were. And like, after last year, you'd understand why, but yeah, I don't see them being as successful as we would hope they would be without Dallas giving them some number of innings this year, whether, be 80 to 100 at least. Maybe nowhere near the 140 he needs for that 20 million event, but it'd be hard to see them making up those innings with anybody else right now.
Yeah, they gave him just over his mark last year for some reason. They're definitely going to go just under his mark this year if they can be lucky enough to. Tanner Banks, a left-hander who could be starting, will be watching Dallas Keuchel's start very intently because he could. I mean, whether Dallas is in the rotation or not, whether Dallas is a gem, Tanner Banks could be starting. I mean, he's a guy that you probably put along with Ronaldo as the other guys are going to make up some starts.
Exactly. And then you don't know but like, if you're going to move one of them into the rotation, you have to send them down for a bit to kind of get ready and stretched out, like it's hard to stretch out at the major league level and be used out of the bullpen. So
yeah, true. And the good news, I suppose, is even though I think all things are still pretty clear for a decent opener weather-wise, apparently the cold is coming, and who knows, that could involve knocking some games out, which would be a big help to probably every team, but certainly to the White Sox. I mean, there's no day off built in here where you can say, all right, well, okay, we can catch up. Cecil get that next start. They're going on this homestand, and they could. I mean, not that you're going to pray for rain or snow or sleet or whatever it's going to take, a horrific ice storm in April, but I mean, it would benefit, if not the players in this hot offense, it would benefit a pitching staff that's just in tatters and was going to be going in. They're only going to be so good. Giolito was going to give you 5. none of these guys are going 7-8. So, I mean, it was already going to be really rough, even with as good a bullpen as the White Sox have. And now it's just gotten scarier because we're at the point now where we don't even know who the starter of the 6th game of the year is. And there's not an obvious choice. Like, well, of course it's Ronaldo, and he's going to do fine and all that. I mean, we're like, yeah, he's going to do fine, but and we don't even know if it's him.
We were all very worried already about this rotation's ability to weather one injury, and then we got that injury, and then we never even imagined 2 injuries.
Like, we didn't even get the season rolling to say like, okay, well, like last year they were
you knew injuries were going to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't think that we were going to lose the number 1 starter before the season started, and the number 2 starter during his first start, and it's just
how lucky
a rough start.
How lucky we were a year ago. It was like, August 1st. Yeah, that's going to be I mean, I think at a certain point, we're all just sort of pinching each other like, okay, wait, this is still going on. Rodon is cranking. Nobody's really getting hurt. Everybody's pitching actually pretty well. Nobody's disappointing. Keuchel, okay. But then you could afford to say like, oh, who cares about Keuchel? You got 4 guys who are just horses. And they're out there. Even Keuchel was out there, not great results, but
nobody, even the team like, Milwaukee and maybe the Dodgers, like there's only a couple of teams that aren't looking for starters, right now, but even they're like, your 5th starter is still a 5th starter, like as long as you go out there and pitch, like if you give me 2 innings every time out, all right, now we have a problem. But like if you have a short outing every now and again, like it's your number 5, there's not really a huge amount of pressure on you, but like realistically, Dallas is pitching maybe in the 5th spot, but he's the, maybe the 3rd starter, right? As far as expectations,
my God,
you need him to be that guy because right now it's Cease, Kopech, and him, like the other guys are like, you hope for anything out of the rest of them, but like, you just don't know.
It's a good segue, Adrian. You mentioned 28 teams in the major leagues on the hunt for starting pitching. It's the rumor that just will not die. I was going to call him Francisco, but I think his name is Francelis, right? Francelis, I think, Montas. I don't know. We call him Frankie, but I imagine we should just use his name. Is seemingly a target for the White Sox. And it seems like the price tag that Oakland is asking for is Andrew Vaughn, who is as hot and as strong a hitter has gotten out of the box in the opening series in Detroit as anyone. Is that a price that if you're the GM of the White Sox, Adrian, are you willing to pay? If it really was, and I don't know if this is the deal straight up, but if it was straight up, is that a deal that you would make?
Frankie Montas as a player on his own is one thing, but only basically this year and then next year is the contract that you're bringing in. So like personally, I don't feel like that's worth it, for one-to-one there. I'd want, maybe like if we're talking like 4 years of control on Frankie Montas, like, all right, maybe that's a different thing, like for your organization and for your World Series window. But that seems like a steep price to pay for a guy that like would be slating in as your number 3B, like he's, as far as stuff goes, like he had a year probably pretty right on par with what Cease did last year. So like they're right in there. I don't think you could definitively say one is that much better than the other. So like that's a lot to pay for a 3 starter. It's not like you're going out and getting like a 2 years of I'm trying to think of somebody that would be a number, like at least somebody that we've seen be a number 1 or number 2 or carry a team for a bit, like that's a different kind of trade to make. Like the Dodgers last year making the trade for Scherzer, like definitely was a rental and they paid a high price, but like they knew they were getting a number 1 guy, like, and that's a different trade to make than it is to make for a number 3 starter for 2 years.
Right. And the price wasn't the same for Lance Lynn, of course, but that was the circumstances. They didn't know that they were going to get an extension with him. And the numbers argued extremely strongly against. In fact, to the point of almost 100% of the time, that player does not sign an extension with the team he's traded to. So, the odds would have been that they weren't going to keep the guy, and they really knew it was just going to be for rental. Again, not the same price. Dane Dunning and Avery Williams, of course, are not Andrew Vaughn producing at the major league level.
In the offseason, like there wasn't as much pressure. Like I also think Oakland knows that the Sox are kind of up against it. So,
They see who's pitching.
Obviously they were going to ask. We all knew that Manaea and Montas were both available, and it was always clear that Montas was going to be a higher asking point than Manaea was. They were more interested in moving Manaea for whatever reason, age, left-hander, whatever, than they were into moving Frankie Montas. And like, I wish we could just, bring Todd Frazier out of retirement and, shop him back for the, when we traded Frankie Montas away in the first place. But it doesn't work like that. I will admit that I was on the trade Andrew Vaughn, bandwagon, but I was on it a lot earlier. I wish I was pushing the trade Andrew Vaughn for Lance Lynn back in 2020 to be the number 3. And I feel like, I knew what we were losing in the potential of Andrew Vaughn, but like I thought at the time, we really needed that number 3 lockdown professional pitcher. And like, I thought they could have really made a deep run in those playoffs. And then it'll really have changed a bunch of things, because then now you're talking about having Dane Dunning still under control for, 3-4 years still, who's looking like a very serviceable pitcher, maybe not a superstar, but like now that's what you're looking for out of a number 3 and 4, which is what you're trying to trade Andrew Vaughn for.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it doesn't make the sense. Like, I guess there's a name that probably makes sense. Like maybe 2 years of a Tyler Glass now, if you knew that he was going to be healthy, like, well, that's a guy that I've seen be a number 1. I've seen perform in the playoffs. Like, that's not what Frankie Montas is. Like, Frankie Montas is a guy that had a really good year last year and has good stuff. But I don't know if I'd give up a, whatever 5 years I think they have left of Andrew Vaughn under control. Like 5 years of that, like, feels like a better bet. Nobody's untouchable, obviously, but I don't think I would make that move for Montas straight up.
Yeah, I mean, straight up, you might just say, well, okay, well, then we'll just keep Vaughn and score 8 runs a game, or try to shoot for that. And if we got to give up 7 because we got whoever, Rick Hahn's cousin pitching tomorrow night, then that's what it's going to be. Do you think, however, if this rotation and this staff continues to struggle, and let's even say that the offense continues to hit at a clip, they can sort of hit around some of this, and maybe the White Sox are still over 500 or 500, say, on this homestand, but there's true struggle with the pitching staff. Do you think Hahn has made a decision not to make that trade, and that's just what it's going to be? Or do you think performance on the field could influence the decision he makes and the pressure he feels to get another pitcher in?
I think he knows the value of what he has in Andrew Vaughn, and I don't think he's going to deviate from what he thinks it's worth. I don't think he's that desperate. I think he's going to keep looking for an option, whether it's Montas or not. And I think like this is one time when it actually benefits us that we can't get Tony to, run a consistent lineup out there, because like there's a chance a guy, like Adam Engel looks really good, or, AJ Pollock started to look really good. Like maybe one of these guys, like you end up moving somebody like that, like there's not a rule book that says just because we traded for AJ Pollock that AJ Pollock can't be the guy that gets traded out for a short-term pitching solution, and you let Engel just play defense and let Vaughn keep hitting, as much as possible. Like there are other options, and maybe, as the minor league system goes, maybe one of those guys is looking really strong, and like maybe as it develops, I think, your options develop, and I don't see Rick Hahn jumping the shark again with things the way they are, especially after, I think he's still feeling a little bit gun shy after the Kimbrel pickup that didn't really work out. Obviously you could probably say that the Cesar Hernandez was a worse move, but like you didn't really give up very much for Cesar Hernandez, but you gave up something, at least I guess kind of a known quantity, in
major league production, which is a lot of the dividing line people usually make.
You gave up 2 major leaguers, like whether they're going to be great major leaguers, you still don't know. Time will tell. But like
you were subtracted from your team to get the other guy.
You would love to have a Cody Hewer right now, like he's a guy that has the stuff. He's going to be a professional guy for a while. Madrigal's going to be in the league for a while. Like, so what you gave up, and you really didn't get that match back.
Yeah. And boy, to think that we didn't do all we could, which might not turn out to be much, but didn't do all we could to keep one proven arm, which I know everybody wants to give the caveat, and they're like, Brett, give it up. It's done. He's in San Francisco now. But hey, listen.
I'm fine with it. Like if that wasn't, I wanted Carlos back personally, but like if you went out and decided like, you know what, like we just can't trust him, health wise, like, well, I'm looking at a bunch of other guys that's contracts are not nearly as high as I thought they were going to be. Like Max Scherzer is the only guy that got, paid as much as everybody thought they were.
Right.
I'm looking at guys, that are on pretty reasonable deals. Like, Robbie Ray didn't get huge money. Gossman didn't get huge money. Like there was guys, like if you wanted to make a competitive offer, like you could have gotten a starter, under control for a few years. And I know they're looking down the barrel at Giolito's contract, but like you need more than one guy, like you need more than one or two guys. Like the best teams and the teams that win usually have at least 3 starters, you know. It's not the old days where it's like two guys and you just go for it. You need
or the playoffs.
Playoff start. Yeah. Right. Especially as there's more and more rounds and there's more and more, time discrepancies between the series, that like you kind of need that third guy to be able to really be a good pitcher, not just a guy.
Yeah. Well, it's an entirely different podcast, and a podcast we had several times over the offseason. The idea that you don't do the basic diligence of at least making the offer so that you at least come away with the draft pick. If not, have the guy say, hey, you know what? The market's not too hot. I will take that 18 million. And geez, if you don't get any value out of me, well, you know what? I overvalued so bad last year. You can't really kill yourself too badly, although you still feel terrible if Carlos Rodon could not pitch for you at all. However, they knew that wasn't the case. As much as everybody wants to say there were secret medical somewhere that said his arm was falling off. That's clearly not. Anyway, definitely a different podcast, and a podcast we addressed earlier. We can't do anything about not having Carlos Rodon with us now because I don't think he's available from the San Francisco Giants, and I don't think we'd be able to meet his price. Hey,
he might be available as a free agent next year.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. He is.
If he pitches as well as he did last year, this year, that's going to be a 1-year contract.
It is. Maybe if he pushes, close. If he can just get through the whole season, he's opting out of that contract. But listen, why talk about a guy in San Francisco? We could talk about plenty of guys. I think I have to look at the scorecard to know who they are. But look, it's Vince Velasquez. He is our starter for opening day, just hours away. Thank you for joining us on this podcast as we are warming up to the home opener against the Seattle Mariners. 3 p.m. sharp, not 3 p.m. sharp, probably closer to 3:30, but hey, tune in early, listen to this podcast a couple more times if you need to, get psyched up, get fired up about how great this offense is and how I think Adrian provided some kind of roadmap to survival with the pitching staff. I'm probably more cynical, but maybe I chimed in there too. It is possible. And with an offense like the White Sox, you can be a little bit more lax with the ERA. And Dallas Keuchel said, he's listening right now saying, yeah, that's right. I can have a 6 ERA and I could actually be 12-11 as Adrian Serrano picked me to perform in 2022. So Adrian, thanks for hopping on for this. It was sort of a one-on-one sort of thing, but I enjoyed previewing with you. Thanks for taking the time and joining up with me. And listen, you're welcome. Post game, who knows how many people? If it's a big win, maybe we'll have a lot of people. If it's a loss, maybe I'll just be talking to myself. But we will have a post game podcast, win or lose, after the game. Probably be later on tonight, later publishing than for the opener in Detroit because the game does start later, and I'm sure it's going to drag a little bit. But we will have a podcast post game where we talk about what happened in the home opener. Hopefully, it brings the White Sox to 3-1 with a lot of fireworks cracking off and number of great pitching performances, wherever they came from. Vince, you're the first guy up. You get the ball. Hey, go 9 if you can, but great performance with Vince. And let's just keep that line rolling. Adrian, do you predict a win for today?
I think it's gonna rely on Robbie Ray. We're gonna see what kind of stopper he's gonna be for them, but they're coming off giving up double digits to that offense up in Minnesota. So it's definitely a bullpen, especially that like you can score runs off of. So I think getting Robbie Ray out pretty soon, taking a lot of pitches, getting his pitch count up, I think it could be a victory for them.
Yeah, just wait it out. The White Sox have enough of a lineup that they can wait some stuff out. We saw it happen even in the one loss in Detroit. Sort of wait these guys out. And Andrew Vaughn, or we sometimes like to call him Adrian Vaughn. Adrian Vaughn just knocked the ball. He gave the White Sox the lead. This team, I guess you could argue, doesn't quit. He doesn't quit for a different manager now, but doesn't quit. Seattle's got a lineup that's got a couple guys that can hurt you for sure, but they're not
quite as deep as a team like the Sox, or even that Minnesota offense is deeper than this team. So like I think it could go well. I think winning 2 or 3 in this series and just keeping it rolling and just keep winning series until Lance comes back. I think that's the goal. That's the mindset. Don't try to win every game, just try to win series until Lance comes back, and then we'll see where we're at.
And that's Adrian Serrano. He doesn't get to touch the Seattle series, but next series he's on Friday. He's already done one of the Bird app recaps. He's going to be doing it again on Friday. He'll have a column rolling next day. So, he's going to be touching this homestand, just not immediately. He'll just be our podcast star. Let's root on a victory. Thank you everybody for spending a little bit of your pregame time with us. Cinch it up, hunker down, enjoy the game, enjoy the big win, and come visit us after the game where we celebrate a post-game win with a podcast. Check you out in, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it's going to be. See you, everybody.